Emily adjusted her bag on her shoulder and took one last look at the orphanage that had been her home for 19 years. The large red brick building held memories of joy and loneliness, of friendships and resilience. With a deep sigh, she turned her back and walked toward the gate, her heart racing with a mix of anxiety and excitement for what lay ahead. Thanks to the kindness of the orphanage's director, Mrs. Anderson, Emily had secured a job as a housekeeper at the mansion of Thomas Alvarez, a renowned real estate magnate. This opportunity felt like a dream come true. It was a chance to prove herself and build a future she had always yearned for. The bus ride to the Alvarez mansion was a blur of nervous thoughts and hopeful daydreams. Emily clutched a small suitcase and gazed out the window at the cityscape rushing by. She promised herself that she would work hard and make the most of this opportunity. Upon arriving at the mansion, Emily's breath was taken away by its grandeur. The towering gates, sprawling gardens, and magnificent facade were far beyond anything she had ever seen. Her heart pounded with a mixture of awe and apprehension. The massive oak doors swung open, and Emily was greeted by Carlos, the butler who had served the Alvarez family for over 30 years. His stern expression and impeccable attire immediately intimidated her. "Welcome, Miss Emily," he said formally. "Please, follow me." Carlos led her through grand hallways adorned with priceless art and intricate chandeliers. It was clear she had stepped into a world far removed from her own. He showed her to a modest room near the back of the house. "This will be your room," Carlos said. "I expect you to start your duties promptly. The family is very particular about how the house is maintained." Emily nodded, swallowing her nerves. "I understand, Mr. Carlos. I will do my best." "See that you do," he replied curtly. "Your work begins tomorrow at dawn." Left alone in her new room, Emily took a deep breath. This was the beginning of a new chapter in her life. Despite the stern reception, she felt a spark of hope. She would face whatever challenges came her way with the same resilience that had carried her through the years at the orphanage. Emily awoke before dawn, her nerves buzzing with anticipation. She dressed quickly and made her way to the kitchen, where Carlos was already waiting. "Good morning, Miss Emily. Today, you will start by cleaning the main hall and the living room," he instructed, his tone formal and distant. Emily nodded and set to work immediately. The mansion's grandeur was even more intimidating in the early morning light. She carefully dusted the antique furniture, polished the marble floors, and cleaned the expansive windows that overlooked the lush gardens. Despite her best efforts, Carlos found fault in her work, pointing out every small mistake. "You missed a spot on the window," he said sharply, "and the floor needs to be polished more thoroughly." Determined to prove herself, Emily took his criticisms in stride. She worked tirelessly, focusing on every detail. The work was physically demanding, but Emily's resolve did not waver. She remembered Mrs. Anderson's words and pushed through her exhaustion. During her breaks, Emily found solace in the mansion's beautiful garden. She would sit on a bench, taking in the vibrant flowers and the sound of birds singing. These moments of peace recharged her and gave her the strength to continue. Over the next few days, Emily's routine became more familiar, though no less challenging. She rose early, worked hard, and faced Carlos's constant scrutiny. His critical eye never seemed to soften, but Emily noticed small improvements in her work each day. She became more efficient and attentive to the mansion's meticulous standards. One afternoon, while she was polishing a chandelier in the grand dining room, Emily heard a voice behind her. "You're doing well," the voice said softly. She turned to see a kind-faced woman standing in the doorway. "I'm Maria Alvarez," Thomas's wife. "Welcome to our home." Emily blushed slightly and nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Alvarez. I'm doing my best." Maria smiled warmly. "I can see that. It's not easy to meet Carlos's standards. Keep up the good work, and don't hesitate to come to me if you need anything." Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. Maria's kindness was a stark contrast to Carlos's stern demeanor. It was a small but significant encouragement that bolstered her determination. As the days turned into weeks, Emily continued to navigate her new life in the Alvarez mansion. She faced each challenge with resilience, knowing that she was building a future for herself. Despite the rigorous demands and Carlos's unyielding expectations, she found moments of peace and support that kept her going. Emily's days at the Alvarez mansion settled into a demanding but steady rhythm. She had grown accustomed to Carlos's critical eye and had even earned a few begrudging nods of approval from him. The mansion's vastness still amazed her, but she had learned to navigate its many rooms and hallways with confidence. One morning, while Emily was dusting the grand library, she heard the front door open and close, followed by the sound of footsteps approaching. She glanced up to see Thomas Alvarez himself entering the room. Emily had only seen him in passing, but today he seemed different, more tired, perhaps, and burdened by some unseen weight. Thomas walked toward the large oak desk at the center of the library, his eyes distant. As he reached for a book, his gaze fell upon Emily. He seemed momentarily startled, as if he hadn't expected to see anyone there. "Good morning," he said, his voice gentle but weary. "Good morning, Mr. Alvarez," Emily replied, trying to keep her voice steady. She felt a nervous flutter in her chest, aware that this was the first time she had spoken directly to him. Thomas's eyes lingered on her for a moment. "You must be the new housekeeper." "Emily, correct?" "Yes, sir," she answered, nodding. He gave a small, tired smile. "I hope you're finding everything to your liking here. It can be a lot to take in." Emily hesitated, then decided to speak honestly. "It's a beautiful place, sir. I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm still learning, but I'm doing my best." Thomas nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's all anyone can ask for. Hard work and dedication are valuable traits." As he turned back to his book, something caught his eye, a glint of light reflecting off Emily's necklace. It was a simple, heart-shaped pendant that she had always worn, a small token from her childhood. Thomas's gaze fixed on the necklace, and for a moment, a shadow of something, recognition perhaps, crossed his face. "That necklace. It's quite lovely," he said, his voice softening. "Is it a family heirloom?" Emily touched the pendant instinctively, feeling its familiar coolness against her fingers. "I've had it for as long as I can remember, sir. It's the only thing I have from my past." Thomas's eyes darkened with a hint of melancholy. "I see. Well, take good care of it. Sometimes, the smallest things hold the greatest value." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Maria Alvarez, who entered the library with a welcoming smile. "Thomas, I see you've met Emily. She's been doing a wonderful job." Thomas nodded, his gaze lingering on Emily for a moment longer before he turned to his wife. "Yes, I have. It seems we have a dedicated new member of our household." As the day went on, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that there was something significant about her encounter with Thomas. His reaction to her necklace had been unexpected, almost as if it had stirred a memory within him. She wondered what it could mean, but decided to focus on her work, pushing the thoughts to the back of her mind. Little did she know, this brief exchange had planted a seed of curiosity in Thomas's mind, one that would soon grow into a quest for answers that could change both of their lives forever. Thomas Alvarez couldn't shake the nagging feeling that Emily's necklace had stirred within him. The heart-shaped pendant was eerily similar to one his daughter had worn before she disappeared 17 years ago. This unsettling thought consumed his mind, making him replay the brief encounter in the library over and over again. Determined to uncover the truth, Thomas decided to take action. That evening, after dinner, he retreated to his study and made a call to his old friend Gabriel, a private investigator with a reputation for solving even the most perplexing cases. "Gabriel, it's Thomas. I need your help," Thomas said, his voice steady but filled with an undercurrent of urgency. "What's going on, Thomas?" Gabriel's voice crackled through the receiver. "There's a new housekeeper here, a young woman named Emily. She has a necklace that looks exactly like the one my daughter wore. I need you to find out everything you can about her past." Gabriel agreed without hesitation. "I'll start immediately. Send me any information you have about her." Thomas spent the rest of the evening compiling what little he knew about Emily. He included the details he had gathered from Mrs. Anderson at the orphanage and any observations he had made during Emily's time at the mansion. His heart ached with a mixture of hope and fear as he sent the information to Gabriel. The next few days passed slowly for Thomas. He tried to go about his usual routine, but his mind was constantly preoccupied with thoughts of Emily and the possibility that she could be his long-lost daughter. He watched her from a distance, noting her diligent work and the way she interacted with the other staff members. Emily, unaware of the investigation, continued to work hard and adapt to her new life at the mansion. She appreciated the small moments of kindness from Maria and the occasional nod of approval from Carlos, but she often felt the weight of Thomas's gaze on her, though she didn't understand why. One afternoon, while Emily was arranging flowers in the sitting room, Thomas approached her. "Emily, may I speak with you for a moment?" he asked, his tone gentle but serious. Emily set down the vase and turned to face him. "Of course, Mr. Alvarez. What is it?" "I've been meaning to ask you more about your necklace," Thomas began, his eyes fixed on the pendant. "You mentioned it's the only thing you have from your past. Do you remember anything else about where it came from?" Emily shook her head slightly, a faint look of sadness in her eyes. "No, sir. It's the only link I have to my childhood. I was found with it when I was just a baby, and I've worn it ever since." Thomas nodded, his suspicions growing stronger. "Thank you, Emily. That will be all for now." As Emily returned to her work, Thomas felt a surge of determination. He knew he couldn't rest until he had answers. That evening, Gabriel called with an update. "Thomas, I've dug into Emily's past. She was found abandoned as a baby in a park near the city, with no records of her parents. The orphanage took her in, and she's been there ever since." Thomas's heart raced. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together, but he needed more concrete proof. "Gabriel, can you arrange for a DNA test? We need to know for sure." "I'll take care of it," Gabriel assured him. "I'll gather what we need and get back to you as soon as possible." The wait for the DNA results was agonizing. Thomas tried to keep his composure, but the uncertainty gnawed at him. Every time he saw Emily, he felt a mix of hope and fear. What if she truly was his daughter? How would she react to such a revelation? Emily, sensing the tension in the air but unaware of its cause, continued to work diligently, finding solace in her routine. She often wondered why Thomas seemed so interested in her necklace and her past, but she didn't dare to ask. The day finally arrived when Gabriel called with the results. Thomas took a deep breath before answering the phone, his heart pounding in his chest. "Gabriel, what did you find?" There was a brief pause on the other end of the line before Gabriel spoke. "Thomas, the DNA test confirms it. Emily is your daughter." The news of the DNA test confirming Emily as his daughter left Thomas stunned. He sat in his study, the weight of the revelation settling over him. After 17 years of searching, hoping, and fearing the worst, his daughter was here, living under his roof. But now came the most challenging part, telling Emily the truth. Thomas decided to consult Maria first. He found her in the garden, tending to the roses. "Maria, we need to talk," he said, his voice trembling slightly. Maria looked up, concerned by his tone. "What is it, Thomas? You look pale." Thomas took a deep breath and told her everything. His suspicions, the investigation, and the DNA results. Maria listened in stunned silence, tears welling in her eyes as she absorbed the news. "Oh, Thomas, this is unbelievable," she said, wiping her tears. "Our daughter. Here all along. How do we tell her?" "We need to be gentle and honest," Thomas replied. "She deserves to know the truth, but we must prepare for her reaction. It's going to be a lot for her to take in." They decided to speak with Emily that evening, in the privacy of the library. Thomas asked Carlos to bring Emily to them, without revealing the reason. Emily entered the library, looking curious and slightly apprehensive. "Please sit down, Emily," Thomas said, gesturing to a chair. Maria sat beside him, her expression both nervous and hopeful. "Is something wrong, Mr. Alvarez?" Emily asked, glancing between them. Thomas took a deep breath, his heart pounding. "Emily, there's something very important we need to tell you. It's about your past, about who you really are." Emily's eyes widened in surprise and confusion. "My past? What do you mean?" Maria reached out and took Emily's hand. "Emily, for many years, Thomas and I have been searching for our daughter who disappeared when she was a baby. Recently, Thomas noticed your necklace and felt it looked exactly like the one our daughter had." Emily instinctively touched the heart-shaped pendant around her neck. "This necklace? But I've had it since I was a baby. It's the only thing I have from before the orphanage." Thomas nodded, his eyes filled with emotion. "We conducted a DNA test, Emily. The results confirmed what I suspected. You are our daughter." The room fell silent as Emily processed the information. Her mind raced, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what she was hearing. "I'm your daughter," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes, Emily," Maria said softly, her voice breaking. "We lost you so many years ago. We never stopped looking for you. And now, by some miracle, you're here with us." Emily felt a whirlwind of emotions, shock, disbelief, and a glimmer of hope. "But how? How did I end up at the orphanage?" "We don't know all the details yet," Thomas admitted. "But we will find out together. What matters now is that we found you." Tears streamed down Emily's face as she looked at Thomas and Maria. I don't know what to say. This is so much to take in." Thomas stood and moved closer to Emily, his eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to say anything right now. Just know that we love you, and we're here for you. We have so much to catch up on, and we'll take it one step at a time." Maria embraced Emily, holding her tightly. "We've missed you so much, Emily. Welcome home." Emily clung to her newfound parents, her heart overflowing with a mix of emotions. The journey ahead would be challenging, but for the first time, she felt a sense of belonging and hope for the future. Together, they would uncover the past and build a new life as a family. The days following the revelation were a whirlwind of emotions for Emily. She felt a mixture of joy, confusion, and a bit of apprehension. Learning that Thomas and Maria were her parents was a life-changing revelation, and Emily struggled to adjust to this new reality. Thomas and Maria were patient, giving Emily space to process everything at her own pace. They encouraged her to ask questions and share her feelings, but they didn't push her. Emily spent hours talking with them, learning about her family's history and the life she might have had if she hadn't been separated from them. Emily's work in the mansion continued, but now with a different perspective. The staff, including Carlos, treated her with a newfound respect, having learned of her true identity. Carlos, in particular, was noticeably kinder, though still professional in his interactions. One afternoon, while Emily was helping Maria in the garden, she decided to ask about the day she disappeared. "What happened when I was taken? How did I end up at the orphanage?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity and a bit of trepidation. Maria sighed, her eyes reflecting a deep sadness. "It was the worst day of our lives. You were just a baby, barely a year old. We were at the park, and I turned my back for just a moment. When I looked back, you were gone. We searched everywhere, called the police, but there was no trace of you." Thomas joined them, his expression somber. "We never gave up hope, Emily. We hired private investigators, checked orphanages, and followed every lead, but nothing ever came of it until now." Emily felt a pang of sorrow for the pain her parents had endured. "I can't imagine what you went through. I'm so sorry." Thomas reached out and took her hand. "It wasn't your fault, Emily. None of it was. The important thing is that we're together now. We have a chance to make up for lost time." Maria smiled through her tears. "And we will, one day at a time." As Emily settled into her new life, she found comfort in small routines. She continued her work around the mansion, but now she also spent time getting to know her parents. They showed her family albums, telling stories about their lives and the things they had hoped to share with her. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Thomas brought out a small box. "Emily, there's something I want to give you," he said, opening the box to reveal a delicate bracelet. "This belonged to my mother. I've been saving it for you." Emily's eyes filled with tears as she accepted the bracelet. "It's beautiful. Thank you, Dad." Thomas's eyes glistened with emotion. "I'm glad you like it. It's a symbol of our family's legacy and the bond we share." The nights were filled with heartfelt conversations and shared dreams. Emily learned about her parents' passions, their hopes for the future, and the life they envisioned now that they were reunited. The warmth of their love and the depth of their connection began to heal the wounds left by years of separation. Emily also took steps to explore her own past. With Thomas and Maria's support, she reached out to Mrs. Anderson at the orphanage, who provided more details about the day she was found. Emily hoped to piece together the missing parts of her history, to understand how she had ended up at the orphanage. The process was emotionally taxing, but it was also cathartic. Emily realized that she was not just discovering her past, but also forging a new identity, one that blended her life at the orphanage with her new reality as the daughter of Thomas and Maria Alvarez. Throughout this journey, Emily found strength in her parents' unwavering support. She knew the road ahead would have its challenges, but with her family by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next. The Alvarez mansion, once a place of work and wonder, had truly become her home. With the support of Thomas and Maria, Emily began a deeper exploration of her past. The mystery of how she ended up at the orphanage still lingered, and Emily felt compelled to uncover the truth. She wanted to understand the full story of her life, not just for herself but also for her parents, who had suffered so much uncertainty and pain. Emily visited Mrs. Anderson at the orphanage, who welcomed her warmly. "Emily, it's so good to see you. I heard about your reunion with your family. It's a miracle," Mrs. Anderson said, her eyes shining with happiness. "Thank you, Mrs. Anderson," Emily replied. "I'm here because I want to learn more about the day I was found. Anything you can tell me might help us understand how I ended up here." Mrs. Anderson nodded thoughtfully. "Of course, Emily. I'll show you the records we have." She led Emily to a small office filled with files and paperwork. After searching for a few minutes, she found a folder labeled with Emily's name. "Here it is," Mrs. Anderson said, handing the folder to Emily. "You were found by a park ranger, just outside the city. There wasn't much with you, only a blanket and that necklace." Emily looked through the documents, her heart aching as she read the details. "Did anyone ever come looking for me? Was there any indication of who might have left me there?" Mrs. Anderson shook her head. "No one ever came forward, and we never found any clues about your parents. It was as if you appeared out of nowhere." Emily sighed, feeling a mix of frustration and determination. "Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. This means a lot to me." Returning to the mansion, Emily shared the information with Thomas and Maria. They decided to revisit the park where she was found, hoping that being there might trigger a memory or reveal some new clue. On a crisp morning, they drove to the park, their emotions a blend of hope and trepidation. The park was serene, with tall trees and winding paths. Emily walked slowly, taking in the surroundings, trying to imagine what it must have been like for the person who left her there. As they reached the spot where she had been found, Thomas took Emily's hand. "This is where our lives changed forever. And now, we're here together, searching for answers." Emily looked around, trying to see the park through the eyes of someone desperate enough to leave a child behind. She noticed a bench nearby and sat down, closing her eyes, willing herself to remember something, anything. Suddenly, a fragment of a memory surfaced, a faint image of a man's face, kind but anxious, telling her to stay put and that someone would come for her. Emily's eyes snapped open. "I think I remember something," she said, her voice trembling. Thomas and Maria leaned in, their faces filled with anticipation. "What is it, Emily?" Maria asked gently. "It's vague, but I remember a man. He told me to stay here and that someone would come for me. He seemed worried." Thomas frowned, deep in thought. "That's more than we had before. Maybe this man knew he couldn't take care of you, but hoped someone else would find you and give you a better life." Emily nodded. "I wish I could remember more." Thomas placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've done so much already, Emily. We'll keep searching and piecing things together. You're not alone in this." As they left the park, Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose. The memory of the man's face, though faint, was a crucial piece of the puzzle. She knew that finding out more about him could lead to understanding her past and why she was left at the orphanage. Back at the mansion, they decided to enlist Gabriel's help once more. Thomas called him and explained the new development. "Gabriel, we have a possible lead." Emily remembered a man who left her at the park. "Can you investigate further?" Gabriel agreed to dig deeper, promising to follow up on this new information. "I'll see what I can find, Thomas. Every detail helps." The search for the truth continued, But this time, Emily felt stronger knowing she had her family by her side. She realized that no matter what they discovered, they would face it together, with a love and support that had already begun to heal the wounds of the past. With Gabriel back on the case, the investigation into Emily's past gained momentum. The memory of the man who left her at the park was a crucial clue, and Gabriel was determined to uncover his identity. He started by revisiting the park and speaking with anyone who might remember something from that day. While Gabriel worked, life at the Alvarez mansion continued. Emily grew closer to Thomas and Maria, feeling more like a part of the family with each passing day. She also found herself increasingly curious about her parents' work in the real estate industry. Thomas noticed her interest and began teaching her the basics of the business. One afternoon, as Emily was helping Thomas organize some files in his office, the phone rang. It was Gabriel. Thomas put the call on speaker so that Emily and Maria, who had just entered the room, could listen in. "Thomas, I've found something," Gabriel said, his voice serious. "I tracked down a former park ranger named Victor, who worked at the park around the time Emily was found. He remembers seeing a man with a baby that day." Emily's heart raced. Did he say who the man was? He didn't know the man's name, but he described him as being in his late 20s or early 30s, with dark hair and a worried expression. Victor also mentioned that the man seemed to be looking around nervously, as if he was afraid of being seen. Thomas leaned forward, his brow furrowed. Did Victor see where the man went after leaving Emily? Gabriel paused. Victor said the man hurried back to a car parked nearby. It was an old sedan, blue with a dent on the passenger side. Unfortunately, he didn't get the license plate number. Maria placed a hand on Emily's shoulder. "It's more than we had before. We're getting closer," Gabriel continued. "I'll keep digging. I'm going to check local records for any reports of missing persons or unusual activity around that time. Maybe we can find a connection." After the call ended, Thomas turned to Emily. "We're making progress. Gabriel is thorough, and he won't stop until we have answers." Emily nodded, feeling a mix of hope and anxiety. "I just want to understand why I was left there." Knowing the truth would bring some closure. In the meantime, Emily focused on her new responsibilities at the mansion and learning more about the family business. Thomas introduced her to key staff members and involved her in meetings, helping her understand the complexities of real estate. One evening, as they sat together after dinner, Thomas shared a story from his early days in the industry. "When I started, I had nothing but a dream and a lot of determination. There were times when I thought I wouldn't make it, but I kept pushing forward." Emily listened intently, inspired by her father's resilience. "It sounds like you faced a lot of challenges." Thomas nodded. "I did, but those challenges made me stronger. And now, I see that same strength in you, Emily. You've faced so much already, and you've come out stronger for it." Emily smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride and connection. "Thank you, Dad. I want to learn everything I can and make you proud." As the days passed, Gabriel's investigation yielded more pieces of the puzzle. He discovered a report of a young woman who had gone missing around the same time Emily was found. Her name was Laura, and she fit the description of someone who might have been involved in Emily's past. Gabriel shared the information with Thomas. "I think Laura could be the key. I'm trying to locate any living relatives who might know more about her disappearance." Thomas relayed the news to Emily and Maria. "We're getting closer." Gabriel found a lead on a woman named Laura who went missing around the time you were found, Emily. "She might be connected to that man." Emily felt a surge of anticipation. "Do we know where she is now?" Gabriel's voice came through the speakerphone. "I'm working on it. I found a possible address for one of her relatives. I'll follow up and keep you posted." The search for Laura added a new layer to the investigation. Emily felt a mix of hope and apprehension, wondering how this new lead would fit into the story of her past. She knew that whatever they discovered, it would bring her one step closer to understanding her journey. As Gabriel continued his investigation, Emily found solace in her growing bond with Thomas and Maria. Together, they faced each new discovery with determination and courage, knowing that the truth, however complex, would ultimately strengthen the ties that bound them. Gabriel's relentless investigation finally bore fruit. He managed to track down Laura's brother, David, who lived in a nearby town. David agreed to meet and share what he knew about his sister's disappearance. Thomas, Maria, and Emily decided to accompany Gabriel to the meeting. They drove to a small cafe where David was waiting. He was a man in his early 40s, with kind eyes that hinted at a past filled with sorrow. "Thank you for meeting us, David," Thomas said, shaking his hand. "We appreciate your willingness to talk." David nodded. "I hope I can help. My sister Laura went missing around the time you mentioned. She had a baby girl, but after she disappeared, we never found out what happened to her." Emily felt a jolt of recognition. "Do you have any idea where she might have gone?" David sighed. "Laura was involved with a man named Mark. He was troubled, always running from something. We think he might have taken her and the baby to escape his problems." Gabriel leaned forward. "Do you know where Mark is now?" David shook his head. "No, he vanished without a trace. But there's one thing. Laura left a note for me, saying if anything happened to her, to look for a blue sedan. I never understood what it meant until now." Thomas exchanged a glance with Emily. "That matches the description of the car seen at the park," David continued. "I still have some of Laura's belongings. Maybe there's something among them that can help us find Mark or understand what happened." He handed over a small box of Laura's things, old photos, letters, and a few personal items. Emily felt a wave of emotion as she sifted through the contents, hoping to find a connection to her past. "Thank you, David," Maria said softly. "This means more to us than you know." As they left the cafe, Emily clutched the box tightly. The pieces of her past were slowly coming together, and she felt a renewed sense of purpose. With the support of her family and Gabriel's expertise, she knew they were on the verge of a breakthrough that could finally reveal the truth about her origins. Back at the mansion, Emily, Thomas, Maria, and Gabriel carefully examined the contents of the box David had given them. They spread the items out on a table in the study, poring over each one for any clues that might lead them to Mark or provide more information about Laura's disappearance. Among the old photos, one caught Emily's eye. It was a picture of Laura holding a baby, her face filled with a mix of joy and worry. On the back of the photo was a date and a handwritten note. "For my dearest Emily, always remember, I love you." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "This is me," she whispered, her eyes welling up with tears. "She named me Emily." Thomas and Maria leaned in to see the photo. "It's her handwriting," David confirmed. "She must have named you before she disappeared." Gabriel picked up a stack of letters tied with a faded ribbon. "Let's see if these letters can tell us more." As they read through the letters, they discovered a series of correspondences between Laura and Mark. The letters detailed their struggles, fears, and plans to escape to a safer place. In one of the last letters, Mark mentioned a cabin in the woods where they could hide until things settled down. This cabin could be where they went, Gabriel suggested. Do you know where it is, David? David nodded slowly. Yes, I remember Laura talking about a cabin up north. It's in a secluded area, not far from a small town called Willow Creek. We need to go there, Emily said, determination in her voice. We might find more answers. Thomas agreed. Let's prepare for the trip. This could be the final piece of the puzzle. They planned the trip meticulously, ensuring they had everything they needed for the journey. Emily felt a mix of excitement and apprehension, knowing they were getting closer to the truth. A few days later, they set out for Willow Creek, the small town nestled in the mountains. The drive was long and winding, but their resolve never wavered. Upon arrival, they quickly located the cabin based on David's directions. The cabin was old and weathered, surrounded by tall trees and an air of abandonment. Emily's heart raced as they approached the door. Gabriel stepped forward, using his skills to unlock the door gently. The interior was dusty and dimly lit, but it was clear that someone had lived there. As they explored the cabin, Emily found another photo of Laura and herself, confirming they had been there together. Gabriel discovered a hidden compartment under the floorboards containing more letters and a journal. The journal detailed Laura's life on the run, her hopes for a better future, and her love for Emily. One of the last entries read, "If anything happens to me, please take care of Emily. She deserves a better life." Tears filled Emily's eyes as she read her mother's words, feeling the depth of her love and sacrifice. "We need to take this back and go through it thoroughly," Gabriel said, carefully packing the letters and the journal. "There might be more clues we've missed." As they left the cabin, Emily felt a sense of closure beginning to form. She had discovered more about her mother and the sacrifices she had made to protect her. With her family by her side, Emily knew they were on the brink of uncovering the full truth and finally laying the past to rest. Back at the mansion, Emily, Thomas, Maria, and Gabriel carefully examined the letters and journal they had found in the cabin. Each page revealed more about Laura's life, her love for Emily, and the struggles she faced while on the run with Mark. One evening, as they sat together in the study, Gabriel read aloud from one of Laura's journal entries. "Mark has decided we need to leave the cabin soon. He's found a safe place for us, but I worry about Emily. I want her to have a stable life, free from fear." Emily listened intently, her heart aching for the mother she never knew. "She did everything she could to protect me," she whispered. Thomas squeezed her hand. "She loved you deeply, Emily. She made unimaginable sacrifices for your safety." As they continued reading, they discovered an entry that mentioned Mark's plan to contact an old friend who could help them start a new life. "He said his friend would help us get new identities and find a place where we can be safe," Laura wrote. "I pray this works. Emily deserves a chance at a normal life." Gabriel paused, deep in thought. If we can identify this friend, we might learn more about what happened to Mark and Laura. The next day, Gabriel began investigating the names mentioned in the journal, hoping to find a connection to Mark's mysterious friend. Meanwhile, Emily and her parents went through old photographs and documents, looking for any additional clues. During their search, Maria found a small, folded piece of paper tucked inside one of Laura's letters. It contained an address and a name, William Carter. "This could be the friend Laura mentioned," Maria said, handing the paper to Gabriel. Gabriel quickly got to work, using his contacts and resources to track down William Carter. After several days of searching, he located a man by that name living in a nearby city. "I've found him," Gabriel announced. We need to visit him and see what he knows." With renewed determination, Thomas, Maria, Emily, and Gabriel set out to meet William Carter. They arrived at a modest house and knocked on the door. A man in his late 50s opened the door, his eyes wary but curious. "Mr. Carter, we're here to ask about Laura and Mark," Gabriel began. "We believe you might have information that can help us." William's expression softened at the mention of their names. "Come in," he said, stepping aside to let them enter. Once inside, William shared his story. "Laura and Mark were good friends of mine. When they came to me for help, they were desperate. Mark had gotten into some trouble, and they needed to disappear. I helped them change their identities and find a new place to live." "Do you know what happened to them?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. William nodded slowly. "Mark was in deeper trouble than he let on. He made some powerful enemies. They found him, and he didn't survive. Laura was heartbroken. She knew she had to protect you, Emily. She left you in the park, hoping someone kind would find you and give you a better life." Tears streamed down Emily's face as she absorbed William's words. "She did it to save me," she whispered. William reached out and gently patted her hand. "She loved you more than anything. She wanted you to be safe, even if it meant letting you go." Thomas and Maria hugged Emily tightly, their hearts breaking for the sacrifices Laura had made. "We're so grateful for everything you've told us, Mr. Carter," Thomas said. "It means the world to us." William smiled sadly. "I'm glad I could help. Laura was a wonderful person. She would be so proud of the woman you've become, Emily." As they left William's house, Emily felt a sense of closure beginning to form. She had learned the truth about her past and the incredible love and bravery of her mother. With her family by her side, Emily knew she could face whatever the future held, armed with the knowledge of her origins and the strength of her mother's legacy. With the truth about her past finally uncovered, Emily felt a profound sense of peace and closure. The journey to uncover her origins had been filled with emotional highs and lows, but it had ultimately brought her closer to her family and provided a deeper understanding of her mother's love and sacrifices. Back at the mansion, life began to settle into a new, harmonious routine. Emily embraced her role in the family business, working closely with Thomas and learning everything she could about real estate. Her determination and resilience impressed everyone, and she quickly became an integral part of the team. One evening, as they gathered in the living room, Thomas made an announcement. "Emily, your mother and I have been talking, and we want to formally adopt you. We know you're already our daughter in every way that matters, but we want to make it official." Emily's eyes filled with tears of joy. "I would love that," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you, Mom and Dad." The adoption process was swift, and soon, Emily was legally recognized as a member of the Alvarez family. The formal adoption brought a renewed sense of belonging and security, further solidifying the bonds they had formed. To celebrate, Thomas and Maria organized a small gathering at the mansion, inviting close friends and family. It was a joyous occasion, filled with laughter, heartfelt speeches, and a sense of new beginnings. Emily stood with her parents, feeling truly at home for the first time in her life. During the celebration, Maria took Emily aside. "I have something for you," she said, handing her a beautifully wrapped box. Inside was a delicate necklace, intricately designed with a locket. "This locket belonged to my mother. I want you to have it." Emily opened the locket to find a small photo of her parents and a space for her own photo. "Thank you, Mom. This means so much to me," she said, hugging Maria tightly. In the weeks that followed, Emily continued to thrive, both personally and professionally. She and her parents often visited Laura's resting place, paying their respects and keeping her memory alive. These visits were a source of comfort and a reminder of the love that had brought them all together. Gabriel, having completed his investigation, remained a close friend of the family. His dedication had played a crucial role in uncovering the truth, and the Alvarezes were eternally grateful for his help. As Emily looked toward the future, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for the family she had found and the life they were building together. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had led her to a place of love, acceptance, and hope. With her parents by her side, Emily knew she could face any challenge and achieve her dreams. The past, once a source of pain and mystery, had been transformed into a foundation of strength and resilience. The Alvarez mansion, once a symbol of opulence and grandeur, had become a true home, filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a bright future.